The sound of hooves thundering behind her made Teresa Ramirez push harder through the brush, her lungs burning as mesquite thorns tore at her dress and skin. But she could not stop because stopping meant death or worse. It was the summer of 1878 in southern Texas, where the heat pressed down like a physical weight and the land stretched endlessly in all directions. Teresa had been running for 2 days now, her feet bleeding through the worn soles of her boots, her body pushed beyond what she thought possible. The men chasing her were outlaws who had murdered her brother when he refused to tell them where the family kept their savings. She had hidden in the root cellar while they ransacked the small ranch house outside of San Antonio, and when they finally left, she emerged to find Miguel lying in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor. His last gasping words told her to run, that they would come back for her, that she had to get away. She had taken his horse and ridden hard toward Gonzales, Texas, where their uncle lived, but the horse had gone lame yesterday afternoon, and she had been forced to continue on foot. The outlaws had picked up her trail this morning, and now they were close enough that she could hear them shouting to each other, their voices carrying across the dry landscape. Teresa stumbled over a rock and caught herself. Her hands scraped raw, her dark hair hanging in tangled waves down her back. She was 22 years old and had never known this kind of terror, this bone-deep certainty that she would not survive the day. The land began to slope downward, and she heard the blessed sound of water. The Guadalupe River cut through this country, and if she could reach it, perhaps she could lose them in the brush along its banks. Her legs felt like they were made of lead, each step requiring more willpower than the last, but she forced herself forward. The voices behind her grew louder. They were gaining on her. Teresa burst through a stand of cottonwoods and saw the river below, its brown water moving sluggishly in the summer heat. She half ran, half fell down the steep bank, her body simply giving out as her foot caught on a root. She tumbled the last few yards and landed hard on the rocky shore, the impact driving the air from her lungs. For a moment, she could not move, could not even think. Her vision swam and her chest heaved as she tried to draw breath. This was how she was going to die, she thought distantly, lying beside a river in the middle of nowhere, caught by men who had already killed her brother. She tried to push herself up, but her arms would not support her weight. Everything hurt. She heard the outlaws crashing through the brush above, heard them shouting in triumph as they spotted her. Then another sound cut through the air, sharp and commanding, a man's voice, deep and steady. That is far enough. Teresa managed to turn her head. Through her blurred vision, she saw a figure on horseback at the top of the bank, silhouetted against the bright Texas sky. The outlaws had stopped, and she could hear the confused murmuring of their voices. The man on the horse moved down the slope with practiced ease, and as he came closer, she could make out more details. He was tall in the saddle, wearing a dusty brown hat and a dark shirt, with a gun belt riding low on his hips. His horse was a beautiful roan, well cared for, and responsive to the slightest pressure of his knees. "This does not concern you, friend," one of the outlaws called out. "The woman stole from us. We are just getting back what is ours." The cowboy brought his horse to a stop between Teresa and the 3 men who had been chasing her. From her position on the ground, she could see his face now. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of steel. There was a calmness about him that seemed unshakable, a steadiness that made the outlaws shift nervously in their saddles. "That is a lie," the cowboy said simply. "I can smell a lie from a mile off, and you 3 reek of it." The leader of the outlaws, a heavy-set man with a scar across his cheek, spat on the ground. "You calling me a liar? I am stating a fact. The woman is exhausted and terrified. She has been running for her life, not running from justice. There is a difference." The cowboy's hand rested casually on his thigh, inches from his revolver. "And I am telling you that she runs no more. She is safe now." Teresa felt something break inside her chest at those words, some dam that had been holding back the full weight of her terror and grief. Tears began to stream down her face, cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks. The cowboy did not look at her, keeping his attention fixed on the 3 men. "You are making a mistake," the scarred man said, his voice taking on a threatening edge. "There are 3 of us and 1 of you. I have noticed, but I have also noticed that none of you have your hands near your weapons, while mine is ready to draw. I have noticed that your horses are tired and your aim will be poor. I have noticed that you are cowards who chase down women. The cowboy's voice remained level, almost conversational. So, here is what is going to happen. You are going to turn around and ride away. If I see you again, if I hear that you have troubled this woman or anyone else, I will find you. And when I find you, the conversation will be much shorter. The three outlaws looked at each other. Teresa could see the calculation in their eyes, weighing the odds, considering whether this lone cowboy was truly as dangerous as he seemed. The scarred man's hand twitched toward his gun, and in that instant, the cowboy's revolver was in his hand, the movement so fast it seemed like magic. He had not even appeared to hurry, yet the gun was simply there, aimed steadily at the leader's chest. "Please do," the cowboy said softly. "It would make this much simpler." The scarred man slowly raised his hands. "We are leaving. Keep the woman. She is more trouble than she is worth anyway." A wise decision. The cowboy did not lower his weapon until the three men had turned their horses and ridden back up the slope. Even then he waited, listening to the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance, before he finally holstered his gun and dismounted. He approached Teresa slowly, as one might approach a wounded animal, and knelt beside her on the rocky shore. Up close she could see that his eyes were not simply gray, but had flecks of green in them, and that there was an old scar along his jaw. His hands, when he reached out to help her sit up, were callous but gentle. "You are safe now," he said again, and the kindness in his voice made Teresa start crying in earnest. Great gasping sobs that she could not control. He did not seem bothered by this, simply waited with infinite patience until the storm passed. When she could finally speak, her voice came out rough and broken. "They killed my brother, Miguel. They killed him, and I could not stop them. I just hid like a coward while they murdered him." "You are not a coward. You survived. That takes courage, too." The cowboy pulled a canteen from his saddle and offered it to her. "Drink slowly. You are dehydrated." The water was warm, but it was the most wonderful thing Teresa had ever tasted. She forced herself to sip it slowly as he had instructed, though she wanted to gulp it down. While she drank, the cowboy examined her injuries with a practiced eye, noting the cuts on her hands and feet, the bruises forming on her arms and legs. "Can you stand?" he asked. Teresa nodded and tried to get to her feet, but her legs buckled immediately. The cowboy caught her before she could fall, one arm supporting her weight with easy strength. She felt herself flush with embarrassment, hating this weakness, hating that she needed help. "There is no shame in reaching your limit," the cowboy said, as if reading her thoughts. "You have run farther than most people could, but you do not have to run anymore." He lifted her easily and carried her to his horse, settling her in the saddle before swinging up behind her. "I am Nathan Jennings," he said. "I have a small ranch about 5 miles from here. You can rest there, get cleaned up, and we can figure out what to do next." "Teresa Ramirez," she managed. "I was trying to get to Gonzales. My uncle lives there. Gonzales is another 20 miles from my place. You would never have made it in your condition." Nathan guided his horse up the slope with one hand, the other arm around Teresa's waist to keep her steady in the saddle. "We will get you there, but first you need food and sleep and someone to look at those cuts." Teresa wanted to argue, to insist that she could not impose on this stranger, but the truth was, she had nothing left. Her body had given everything it had, and now she was running on fumes. She sagged against Nathan's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing, the solid warmth of him. For the first time in 2 days, she felt something other than terror. She felt safe. The ride to Nathan's ranch was a blur. Teresa drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of the landscape passing by, the sun beating down on them. When she opened her eyes again, they were approaching a modest ranch house built of weathered wood with a covered porch running along the front. There was a barn and a corral with several horses, and beyond that, she could see cattle grazing in the distance. It was not a large operation, but it was well maintained, everything in its proper place. A woman came out onto the porch as they approached, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50 years old, with graying hair pulled back in a bun and sharp, intelligent eyes. "Nathan Jennings, what have you brought home this time?" "Found her by the river, Mrs. Hutchinson. She has been running from outlaws. She needs help." Nathan dismounted and carefully lifted Teresa down. The woman's expression softened immediately, and she hurried forward to take Teresa's other arm. "Poor thing, you look half dead. Come on, let us get you inside and properly cared for. Nathan, you bring in some water for a bath. This girl needs washing and tending." Mrs. Hutchinson practically carried Teresa into the house, keeping up a steady stream of talk that was oddly comforting. I keep house for Nathan and his father, have done for near 10 years now since his mother passed. Do not worry, you are in good hands. We will have you right as rain in no time. The interior of the house was simple, but clean, with furniture that had clearly been built to last rather than to impress. Mrs. Hutchinson led Teresa to a small bedroom and helped her sit on the edge of the bed. Let me see those feet. Oh my, you have torn them up something awful. Stay right there. She bustled out and returned a few minutes later with a basin of warm water, clean cloths, and a box of medical supplies. Nathan appeared in the doorway with a large copper tub, which he set down in the corner. I will heat more water for a bath, he said, then hesitated. Those men, did they hurt you? Beyond chasing you, I mean. Teresa understood what he was asking and shook her head. I got away before they could. My brother gave me time to hide. Something eased in Nathan's expression. Good. I am sorry about your brother. He left before she could respond, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. Mrs. Hutchinson cleaned and bandaged Teresa's feet with efficient gentleness, clicking her tongue over the state of them. You must have run through half of Texas. What you need now is rest and food and time to heal. Do not you worry about those men coming here. Nathan will not let anything happen to you, and neither will his father. I do not want to bring trouble to your door, Teresa said. Trouble has a way of finding all of us regardless. Better to face it with friends at your side. Mrs. Hutchinson finished with the bandages and helped Teresa undress down to her shift. Over the next hour, Nathan and an older man, who must have been his father, brought in bucket after bucket of hot water until the tub was full. Mrs. Hutchinson shooed them out and helped Teresa into the bath. The hot water felt like heaven. Teresa sank into it with a groan, feeling 2 days of dirt and terror begin to wash away. Mrs. Hutchinson washed her hair with surprising tenderness, working out the tangles and debris. You have beautiful hair, she said. My daughter had hair like this, thick and dark. She lives in Austin now with her husband and 3 children. You must miss her, Teresa said, every day. But that is what children do. They grow up and make their own lives, as they should. Mrs. Hutchinson poured a pitcher of clean water over Teresa's hair to rinse out the soap. Nathan is a good man. He takes after his father that way. They have a strong sense of right and wrong, cannot stand by when someone needs help. Got Nathan in trouble more than once when he was younger, but I suppose it also made him who he is. After the bath, Mrs. Hutchinson provided a clean nightgown and insisted that Teresa get into bed. She brought a tray with soup and fresh bread, and Teresa ate ravenously, only realizing how hungry she was once the food was in front of her. The older woman sat in a chair by the window, mending a shirt and keeping up a gentle flow of conversation that required little response. It was exactly what Teresa needed, this calm domestic normalcy after the chaos and fear. When the food was gone, Teresa could not keep her eyes open any longer. She sank into the soft mattress and was asleep before Mrs. Hutchinson had even left the room. She woke once in the night, disoriented and afraid, but then she heard voices from the other room, low and steady, and remembered where she was. Nathan and his father were talking, their voices too quiet for her to make out the words, but the sound itself was reassuring. She pulled the quilt up to her chin and fell back asleep. The next time she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window, and she could hear activity outside. For a moment, Teresa simply lay there, taking stock of her body. Everything hurt, but it was a dull ache rather than the sharp agony of yesterday. Her feet throbbed, but when she carefully pulled back the covers to look at them, the bandages were clean and white. Someone must have changed them while she slept. There was a soft knock on the door, and Mrs. Hutchinson entered with another tray. Good, you are awake. I brought breakfast. How are you feeling? Sore, Teresa admitted. But better, thank you for everything you have done. Nonsense, it is just common decency. Now eat up. You need to rebuild your strength. Mrs. Hutchinson set the tray on Teresa's lap. There were eggs and bacon, biscuits with honey, and a cup of strong coffee. Nathan rode out early to check on the cattle, but he said to tell you that he will take you to Gonzales whenever you are ready. No rush, though. You should rest for at least a few days. Teresa ate slowly, savoring each bite. Real food, after 2 days of running with nothing. It felt almost too good to be true. I need to send word to my uncle. He will be worried when I do not arrive. There is a telegraph office in town, about 3 miles from here. Nathan can ride in this afternoon and send a message for you. What is your uncle's name? Roberto Ramirez. He owns a general store in Gonzales. Teresa paused, then added, I do not have money to pay for the telegram, or for any of this. The outlaws took everything when they... She could not finish the sentence. Mrs. Hutchinson's expression grew fierce. You do not need to pay for basic human kindness. Those men took enough from you. Do not let them take your dignity too. Nathan will send the telegram, and your uncle can come fetch you when you are well enough to travel. After breakfast, Teresa felt strong enough to get out of bed. Mrs. Hutchinson had washed and mended her dress, and provided some of her daughter's old clothes that fit reasonably well. Teresa dressed slowly, her body protesting each movement, and made her way to the main room of the house. The ranch house was larger than it had seemed last night. There was a big kitchen with a wood stove, a dining table that could seat 6, and a sitting area with comfortable chairs arranged around a fireplace. Everything was neat and well-ordered, the home of people who took pride in their space. Through the window, Teresa could see the barn and corral, and beyond that, the endless Texas landscape stretching to the horizon. Nathan's father was sitting at the table, reading a newspaper. He looked up as Teresa entered and stood politely. He was in his late 50s, with gray hair and the same gray-green eyes as his son, weathered by years of sun and wind. Miss Ramirez, I am Nathan's father, Thomas Jennings. I hope you are feeling better today. Much better, thank you, and thank you for giving me shelter. I do not know what would have happened if Nathan had not come along when he did. Teresa sat down carefully in one of the chairs, grateful to be off her feet. Thomas poured her a cup of coffee from the pot on the stove and brought it over. Nathan has a habit of being in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place, depending on your perspective. He told me what happened with your brother. I am very sorry for your loss. The sympathy in his voice brought tears to Teresa's eyes. She blinked them back, trying to maintain her composure. Miguel was a good man. He did not deserve what happened to him. He was only trying to protect what little we had. The frontier can be a hard place, Thomas said. There are good people here, but there are also men who take what they want without regard for right or wrong. It sounds like your brother was one of the good ones. They talked for a while, Thomas asking gentle questions about her family and her life before the tragedy. Teresa found herself telling him about growing up on the small ranch outside San Antonio, about her parents who had died of fever when she was young, about how Miguel had raised her and taught her to ride and rope and shoot. They had not had much, but they had been happy. And now Miguel was gone, and she had nothing but the clothes on her back and a terror that still lurked in the corners of her mind. Nathan returned in the early afternoon, dust-covered and tired. He brightened when he saw Teresa sitting in the main room. You are up. That is a good sign. How are the feet? Painful, but I can walk. Mrs. Hutchinson changed the bandages this morning. Teresa found herself oddly shy now, in the light of day, looking at the man who had saved her life. He was even more handsome than she had realized, tall and lean, with broad shoulders and strong hands. There was a quiet confidence about him, a sense that he could handle whatever life threw at him. Your father said you would ride to town to send a telegram to my uncle. I can go right now, if you write down the message. Nathan pulled off his hat and hung it on a peg by the door. His hair was dark brown and slightly too long, curling at his neck. What do you want to say? Teresa borrowed paper and a pencil from Thomas and composed a brief message explaining what had happened and where she was. Nathan read it over, nodded, and tucked it into his pocket. I will be back before supper. Is there anything else you need from town? I need everything, Teresa said with a bitter laugh. But I have no way to pay for it. We will worry about that later. For now, just focus on healing. Nathan headed for the door, then paused and looked back at her. I am glad you are safe, Teresa. That is the important thing. After he left, Teresa helped Mrs. Hutchinson with small tasks around the house, needing to be useful, to do something other than sit and think about Miguel and the outlaws and everything she had lost. The older woman was glad for the company and kept up a steady stream of stories about Nathan and his father, painting a picture of a family that had weathered its share of hardships but remained strong. Nathan's mother died when he was 15. Mrs. Hutchinson said as they folded laundry together. Cholera outbreak swept through the area, nearly killed Thomas too, but he pulled through. Nathan had to become a man very quickly, helping run this ranch and take care of his father. It aged him in some ways, but it also gave him that core of strength. He knows what real loss looks like, which is why he cannot stand by when others are suffering. He seems very capable, Teresa said carefully. Mrs. Hutchinson smiled. He is, and he is single, if you're wondering. Had a girl once, few years back. But she decided ranch life was not for her and moved back east. Nathan took it hard, but he recovered. He is the kind of man who commits fully to things, whether it is working this land or caring for people. You could do worse. Teresa felt her cheeks flush. I am not looking for a husband. I just lost my brother. I cannot even think about such things. Of course not, dear. I am just a nosy old woman. Ignore me. But Mrs.? Hutchinson's smile suggested she did not expect to be ignored at all. Nathan returned as the sun was setting, bringing with him not just confirmation that the telegram had been sent, but also several packages. I took the liberty of getting you some things, he said, setting them on the table. Basic necessities, a dress, some undergarments, a pair of boots that should fit. The storekeeper's wife helped me pick everything out, so if I got it wrong, blame her. Teresa stared at the packages, overwhelmed. Nathan, I cannot accept all this. I have no way to repay you. Did I ask for repayment? Nathan's tone was gentle but firm. Teresa, you lost everything. Let us help you get back on your feet. When you are settled with your uncle, if you still feel the need to repay us, you can send money then. But for now, just accept the help in the spirit it is given. Thomas nodded his agreement. The boy is right. We are not wealthy, but we have enough to spare for someone in need. It would be an insult to our hospitality to refuse. Put that way, Teresa could hardly argue. She thanked them both, her voice thick with emotion, and took the packages to her room. Everything fit reasonably well, and the boots were a vast improvement over her ruined ones. She changed into the new dress, a simple calico in blue that brought out the color of her eyes, and returned to the main room for supper. The meal was a cheerful affair, with Mrs. Hutchinson serving up beef stew and cornbread, while Thomas told stories about the early days of the ranch. Nathan was quieter, but Teresa caught him looking at her several times, with an expression she could not quite read. Not pity, but something warmer, interest perhaps. She found herself looking back, noticing the way his hands moved when he talked, the quick flash of his smile when his father said something amusing. After supper, Nathan walked Teresa out to the porch. The night was warm and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. Your uncle sent a telegram back, Nathan said. He was very relieved to hear you were safe. He said he will come fetch you in 3 days, once he can arrange for someone to watch the store. 3 days, Teresa repeated. Part of her wanted to leave immediately, to get to the safety of family. But another part of her, a part she was not quite ready to examine too closely, wanted to stay here in this peaceful place with these kind people. With Nathan, if you need longer to heal, I am sure he would understand, Nathan said. Those feet of yours took a beating. You should not be traveling until you can walk without limping. I will be fine, Teresa said automatically, then sighed. That is a lie. I am not fine. I keep thinking about Miguel, about how I should have done something to help him, and I keep expecting to hear the outlaws coming back. Nathan was quiet for a moment. My mother died in my arms, he said finally. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. For months afterward, I would hear her voice calling my name. I would turn around expecting to see her, and the reality of her absence would hit me all over again. He turned to look at Teresa, his eyes serious in the dim light from the window. What I am saying is that grief is not a straight path. It comes in waves, and the fear, the memory of danger, that takes time to fade too. But it does fade, I promise you that. How do you know I will be safe? Those men could come back. They could follow me to my uncle's house and hurt him too. Teresa wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm night. They could, but they would have to get through me first. Nathan's voice carried absolute certainty. I am going to ride with you to Gonzales when your uncle comes. I am going to make sure you get there safely. And I am going to have a conversation with the sheriff about those men and what they did to your brother. Justice may be slow on the frontier, but it does exist. You have already done so much for me. I cannot ask you to do more. You are not asking. I am offering. Nathan smiled slightly. Besides, I have been meaning to make a trip to Gonzales anyway. The timing just works out well. They stood together in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the chirp of crickets. Teresa found herself relaxing in Nathan's presence, the tight knot of fear in her chest loosening slightly. There was something steady about him, something that made her feel like perhaps the world was not entirely made of danger and loss. Over the next 3 days, Teresa settled into the rhythm of the ranch. She helped Mrs. Hutchinson with cooking and cleaning, grateful for tasks that kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. Her feet healed slowly, the bandages coming off to reveal angry red scars that would likely never fully fade. But she could walk without limping, and that was enough. Nathan taught her to milk the cow, his hands guiding hers as he showed her the proper technique. "You have to be gentle but firm," he said, standing close behind her. "The cow can sense if you are nervous." Teresa was very conscious of his nearness, of the warmth of his body and the smell of him, leather and soap and sun-warmed skin. "I am not nervous," she said, but her voice came out slightly breathless. "No?" There was amusement in Nathan's tone. "Then why is your hand shaking?" "Maybe the cow is nervous and it is making me nervous," Teresa shot back and was rewarded with a low chuckle. They worked together easily, falling into a natural partnership. Nathan showed her around the ranch, explaining his plans for expanding the herd, his hopes for the future. He was an ambitious man, Teresa realized, but in a quiet way. He did not seek attention or acclaim, just wanted to build something lasting. In turn, Teresa found herself telling him about her own dreams, things she had barely admitted to Miguel, how she had always wanted to travel, to see something beyond the small circle of their ranch, how she loved to read but had few books, devouring the same ones over and over. Nathan listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making her feel like her thoughts and dreams mattered. On the second evening, they went for a walk along the creek that ran through Nathan's property. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Teresa felt more at peace than she had in days, the beauty of the landscape and the quiet companionship soothing something raw inside her. "Thank you," she said suddenly, "not just for saving my life, but for giving me space to heal, for treating me like a person instead of a problem or a victim." Nathan looked at her thoughtfully. "You are not a victim, Teresa. You are a survivor. There is a difference. Sometimes I do not feel like much of a survivor. I feel like I just ran away while Miguel died. Your brother told you to run. He gave his life to give you a chance at living. The best way to honor that is to actually live, not to torture yourself with guilt." Nathan picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the surface of the creek. "I know it is easier said than done, but it is still true." They walked in silence for a while, and Teresa felt the words settling into her heart. Nathan was right. Miguel had wanted her to survive. Wasting that gift on guilt would be a betrayal of his sacrifice. "What will you do in Gonzales?" Nathan asked. "After you get there, I mean." "I do not know. Help my uncle with the store, I suppose. Try to rebuild some kind of life." Teresa hesitated, then added, "I do not have much experience with store work. I have always been a ranch hand, working with animals and the land. Those are good skills, valuable skills." Nathan glanced at her. "If you ever decide store work is not for you, there are ranches always looking for capable help, including mine." Teresa's heart skipped a beat. Was he suggesting what she thought he was suggesting? "You barely know me. How do you know I am capable? I have seen you work these past few days. You are quick to learn, and you do not shy away from hard tasks. And you have sand, Teresa. You ran for 2 days straight to save your life. Most people would have given up." Nathan stopped walking and turned to face her. "I am not offering out of pity. I am offering because I think you would be an asset, and because I would like you to stay." There it was, laid out plain and simple. Teresa's breath caught in her throat. She barely knew this man, had only been here for 3 days, and yet the thought of leaving made her chest tight with something that felt dangerously like longing. "I need to go to my uncle. He is expecting me, and he is the only family I have left." "I understand, and I am not asking you to decide anything right now. I am just saying the option is there, if you want it, now or in the future." Nathan smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warm and open. "Come on, we should get back before Mrs. Hutchinson sends out a search party." That night, Teresa lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Nathan's offer. Part of her wanted to accept immediately, to stay in this place that had become a refuge. But another part of her, the cautious part shaped by loss, warned her not to make decisions based on gratitude or the temporary safety of a haven. She needed to go to Gonzales, to reconnect with her uncle, to give herself time to grieve and heal properly. And then, maybe then, She could think about what she really wanted. Uncle Roberto arrived on the third day, driving a wagon and looking older than Teresa remembered. He was a small, wiry man in his 50s, with graying hair and the same dark eyes as Miguel. When he saw Teresa, his face crumpled, and he pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Thank God you are safe. When I got the telegram, I could not believe it. Miguel, my poor nephew." They cried together, mourning the loss of the young man they had both loved. Then Teresa introduced Roberto to Nathan and his family, trying to find adequate words to express what they had done for her. Roberto shook Nathan's hand with profound gratitude. "You saved my niece's life. I can never repay that debt." "No debt," Nathan said firmly. "I did what anyone should do, but I am glad I was there when she needed help." Roberto had brought some money, insisting on paying Nathan back for the clothes and supplies. Nathan tried to refuse, but Roberto was equally stubborn, and in the end, Nathan accepted a token amount just to preserve the older man's dignity. They loaded Teresa's few belongings into the wagon, and she said goodbye to Mrs. Hutchinson and Thomas, thanking them again for their kindness. Nathan walked her to the wagon, his expression unreadable. "Remember what I said. The offer stands whenever you want to take it, if you want to take it." "I will remember," Teresa promised. She wanted to say more, to tell him that these 3 days had meant more to her than she could express, that the thought of leaving made her feel hollow. But the words stuck in her throat, and all she could do was look at him, hoping her eyes conveyed what her voice could not. "I will ride with you to Gonzales," Nathan said, "just to make sure you get there safely." Roberto tried to protest that it was not necessary, but Nathan was already saddling his horse. Thomas came out to see them off, pressing a small bag into Teresa's hands. "Some food for the journey, and this." He handed her a book, its cover worn but well cared for. "Mrs. Hutchinson thought you might like it. She says it is one of her favorites." Teresa looked down at the book, her eyes burning with tears. It was a collection of poetry. Thank you all so much." The journey to Gonzales took most of the day. Nathan rode alongside the wagon, and Roberto peppered him with questions about the ranch and the area and his family. Teresa mostly sat in silence, watching the landscape roll by and trying to memorize every detail of Nathan's face, the way he sat his horse, the sound of his voice. She was being foolish, she told herself. She had known him for 3 days. This feeling could not be real, but it felt real. It felt like her heart was being pulled in 2 directions, toward the safety and family waiting in Gonzales, and toward the man riding beside her wagon. They reached Gonzales as the sun was setting. It was a decent-sized town, with a main street lined with shops and businesses, including Roberto's general store. The store was a solid 2-story building, with the shop on the ground floor and living quarters above. Roberto helped Teresa down from the wagon and led her inside, showing her the space with obvious pride. "It is not much, but it makes a good living, and there is plenty of room for you. I fixed up the spare bedroom when I got your telegram." Roberto climbed the stairs to the living quarters, and Teresa followed, Nathan bringing up the rear with her belongings. The living space was comfortable and clean, with a small kitchen, a sitting area, and 2 bedrooms. Roberto showed Teresa to her room, which had a bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the main street. "I hope you will be comfortable here. You are welcome to stay as long as you like, forever, if you want. You are family, Teresa." "Thank you, Uncle Roberto. I am grateful." Teresa set down her things and turned to find Nathan standing in the doorway, his hat in his hands. "I should get going. It is a long ride back, and I want to make some distance before it gets full dark." Nathan looked at Teresa, and for a moment something passed between them, a connection that made the air feel charged. "You take care of yourself, Teresa Ramirez." "You too, Nathan Jennings." Teresa wanted to go to him, to ask him to stay, but she remained frozen in place. Nathan nodded to Roberto. "Sir, you have a good niece. I hope you know how lucky you are." Then he turned and walked away, his boots echoing on the stairs. Teresa rushed to the window and watched as he mounted his horse and rode down the main street. She stood there long after he had disappeared from view, her hand pressed against the glass, feeling like she had just made a terrible mistake. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Teresa threw herself into helping Roberto with the store, learning the inventory, serving customers, keeping the books. She was good at it, to her surprise. And Roberto was delighted to have the help. The townspeople were kind, welcoming her, and offering condolences about Miguel. Several young men showed obvious interest in the new girl in town, but Teresa could not bring herself to care. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the ranch, to Nathan and his quiet strength, to the feeling of safety she had known there. At night she read the poetry book Mrs. Hutchinson had given her, finding comfort in the verses. One poem in particular resonated with her, a piece about finding home in unexpected places. She read it over and over until she had it memorized. Roberto noticed her distraction and asked about it one evening as they ate dinner in the small kitchen. "You seem far away, Nina. Are you still thinking about your brother?" "Always," Teresa said, which was true. "But I'm also thinking about other things, about what I want my life to be." "And what do you want?" Roberto asked gently. Teresa set down her fork and met her uncle's eyes. "I want to go back to the ranch, to Nathan's ranch. He offered me work and I think I want to accept, if the offer is still open." Roberto did not look surprised. "I wondered if that might be the case. The way you two looked at each other, it was something special. But, Teresa, you have only known him for 3 days. Are you sure this is about the job and not about the man?" "I do not know," Teresa admitted. "Maybe it is both. But I know I have been happy here with you, and grateful for everything you have done. But I also know something is missing, and I think that something is the life I could have at the ranch, working with the land and the animals, being useful in that way. And yes, being near Nathan, even if nothing comes of that, even if he only sees me as a hired hand, I think I would rather be there than anywhere else." Roberto reached across the table and took her hand. "Then you should go. Life is too short to ignore your heart, Teresa. I learned that when I lost my wife. You do what makes you happy, and do not worry about me. I will manage the store just fine, and you will visit when you can." "You are not angry?" Teresa asked. "How could I be angry about you finding where you belong?" Roberto smiled, though his eyes were sad. "I will miss you, but I want you to be happy more than I want you to stay." Teresa hugged her uncle tightly, overwhelmed by his generosity. They talked late into the night, making plans. Teresa would leave in a few days, giving Roberto time to find temporary help with the store. She would take the wagon and return it when she next visited, and she would send word as soon as she arrived, so Roberto would not worry. 3 days later, Teresa set out for Nathan's ranch. She had sent no word ahead, not wanting to give Nathan a chance to refuse her. Either the offer was still open or it was not, and she would rather know for certain than spend weeks wondering. The journey seemed longer without company, but Teresa did not mind. She had time to think, to rehearse what she would say. By the time she arrived at the ranch, she had gone over it 100 times in her head. Nathan was in the corral, working with a young horse. He looked up as the wagon approached, and his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked like hope. He handed the horse's lead to one of his ranch hands and walked over to meet her. "Teresa, what are you doing here? Is everything all right?" He reached up to help her down from the wagon, and his hands lingered on her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. "Everything is fine. I came to take you up on your offer if it is still open. The job, I mean." Teresa felt her courage faltering under his steady gaze. "I know it has been a few weeks, and you might have found someone else or changed your mind, but I thought I should at least ask." Nathan's face split into a wide smile, the kind that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "The offer is still open. It will always be open for you. But, Teresa, are you sure? What about your uncle?" "My uncle wants me to be happy, and I think I will be happy here, working on the ranch, if you will have me." Teresa met his eyes. "I miss this place. I miss the work. And I missed you, Nathan Jennings." For a moment, Nathan just stared at her, and Teresa's heart hammered in her chest. Then he laughed, a sound of pure joy, and swept her up in a hug that lifted her feet off the ground. "I missed you too. Every single day you were gone, I missed you." He set her down gently, and they stood there grinning at each other like fools. Mrs. Hutchinson emerged from the house, took one look at them, and smiled. "I will go make up the spare room," she called. "Welcome home, Teresa." And it did feel like coming home. Teresa settled into life on the ranch with an ease that surprised even her. She worked alongside Nathan and his father, learning the business of cattle ranching, proving herself capable and hardworking. At night, she studied books on animal husbandry that Nathan lent her, determined to be more than just hired help. But it was not just the work that made her happy. It was the quiet moments with Nathan, the conversations over meals, the shared laughter over a stubborn calf or a horse that refused to cooperate. It was the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, like she was something precious and unexpected. It was the way her heart lifted every time she saw him coming in from the range. They were careful with each other at first, both aware of the potential for things to become complicated. But the attraction between them was undeniable, and it grew stronger with each passing day. They took walks in the evening, sat together on the porch after supper, found excuses to work side by side, and slowly, almost inevitably, friendship deepened into something more. It was Thomas who finally spoke up. One evening when Nathan was off checking on a sick cow, and Teresa was helping Mrs. Hutchinson with dinner. "You are in love with my son," he said bluntly. It was not a question. Teresa nearly dropped the pot she was holding. That is, do not bother denying it. I have eyes, and he is in love with you too, though he is being stubborn about admitting it. Thomas took the pot from her and set it on the stove. "The question is, what are you going to do about it? I do not know if he wants me that way. He has been very proper, never tried anything." Teresa wrung her hands. "Maybe he just sees me as a friend or a good worker." "Mrs.?" Hutchinson snorted. "That boy looks at you like you hung the moon. He is just being respectful, not wanting to take advantage since you work for him. Someone needs to give one of you a push, or you will both be pining away forever." "I cannot just tell him," Teresa protested. "What if I am wrong? What if he does not feel the same way? It would ruin everything. Or it would make everything better." Thomas put a hand on her shoulder. "Life is short, Teresa. You know that better than most. Do not waste time being afraid of happiness." That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Teresa sat on the porch and thought about Thomas's words. He was right. She had been given a second chance at life when Nathan saved her by the river. What was the point of that second chance if she was too afraid to really live it? She heard the door open behind her, and Nathan came out, sitting down in the chair beside hers. "Could not sleep?" he asked. "Too much on my mind," Teresa said. "Anything you want to talk about?" Nathan stretched his long legs out in front of him, his face peaceful in the moonlight. Teresa took a deep breath. "Your father said something to me earlier. He said I was in love with you." Nathan went very still. "Did he now? And Mrs. Hutchinson said you were in love with me." Teresa forced herself to look at him. "Are they right, Nathan? Or are they just two meddling people who want to see romance where there is none?" For a long moment, Nathan did not answer. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I did not want to say anything because I did not want to make you uncomfortable. You work here, and I am your employer, and I did not want you to feel pressured or obligated." He turned his head to look at her, and his eyes were full of something that made Teresa's breath catch. "But yes, Teresa, I am in love with you. I have been since about the second day you were here, when you helped Mrs. Hutchinson make bread and got flour all over your face and laughed about it. I looked at you and thought, this is the woman I want to spend my life with." Teresa felt tears prick her eyes. "I thought I was alone in this. I thought maybe it was just me, being grateful and confusing that with something else. But it is not just gratitude. Nathan, I love you too. I love your kindness and your strength and the way you see the best in people. I love working beside you and talking with you and just being near you." Nathan reached over and took her hand, his rough fingers threading through hers. "I am not a rich man, Teresa. This ranch is small, and the work is hard, and there will be lean years mixed in with the good ones. But if you will have me, if you will marry me, I promise I will do everything in my power to make you happy, to give you a good life." "Yes," Teresa said, the word coming out in a rush. "Yes, Nathan, I will marry you. I do not need riches or an easy life. I just need you." Nathan stood and pulled her up into his arms, and then he was kissing her, his lips gentle and sure against hers. Teresa melted into him, all the longing of the past weeks pouring out in that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I am the luckiest man in Texas," he murmured. "I think I might be the luckiest woman," Teresa countered. They stood there under the stars, wrapped in each other's arms, and Teresa thought about that day by the river when she had been running for her life. How Nathan had told her she was safe, that she could stop running. She had stopped running that day, but she had found so much more than safety. She had found home. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the church in Gonzales. Uncle Roberto gave Teresa away, tears streaming down his face. Mrs. Hutchinson and Thomas stood as witnesses, both looking extremely pleased with themselves. The whole town turned out for the celebration afterward, with music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. As Teresa danced with Nathan in the twilight, his arms strong around her, she felt a peace she had never known. Miguel's death would always be a scar on her heart, but she knew he would have wanted this for her. He had told her to run so she could live, and she was living, fully and completely and with a joy she had never imagined possible. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked, spinning her gently. "I am thinking about how much can change in a short time. 2 months ago, I was running for my life. Now I am married to the best man I have ever known." Teresa smiled up at him. "And I am thinking that I am ready for whatever comes next." "Good," Nathan said, "because I have a feeling we are going to have a wonderful adventure together." And they did. Teresa and Nathan built a life together on that ranch, working side by side through every season. There were hard times, years when the drought made water scarce and the cattle struggled. There were good times when the rains came and the grass grew thick and the herd multiplied. Through it all, they faced each challenge as partners, their love deepening with each shared experience. Thomas lived to see the ranch prosper and to meet his grandchildren. The first was a boy, born 2 years after the wedding, with Nathan's gray-green eyes and Teresa's dark hair. They named him Miguel, after Teresa's brother, and when she held him for the first time, she wept with both sorrow and joy. The second was a girl, born 3 years later, who inherited Nathan's quiet strength and Teresa's fierce determination. They named her Grace, because that is what she felt like, a gift of grace after so much loss. Mrs. Hutchinson stayed on until she was too old to work anymore, and then she moved into the main house where Teresa cared for her, with the same tenderness the older woman had once shown to a frightened, exhausted girl by the river. When Mrs. Hutchinson died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 72, the whole town mourned. Teresa kept in close contact with Uncle Roberto, visiting him regularly in Gonzales and bringing the children to see him. He never remarried, but he was content with his store and his place in the community. He lived to be 85, dying peacefully with Teresa and Nathan at his bedside. As the years passed, Nathan and Teresa expanded the ranch, buying up neighboring land when it became available. They built a reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle, and the ranch became one of the most respected in the area. But their greatest success was not measured in acres or herd size. It was measured in the family they built, the children they raised, and the love that sustained them through everything life threw at them. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Teresa back to the spot by the river where they had first met. The place looked different now, more settled, with a bridge crossing the water and a well-worn road running alongside. But the river still flowed, constant and unchanging, a witness to their beginning. "Do you ever think about that day?" Nathan asked, his arm around Teresa's waist as they looked at the water. "All the time," Teresa said. "I think about how terrified I was, how certain I was that I would die. And then you appeared, like something out of a dream, and you told me I was safe. You were safe. I would never have let anything happen to you." Nathan pulled her closer. "I think I fell in love with you the moment I saw you lying there by the river. You were exhausted and scared, but you were still fighting. You had not given up. That is when I knew you were special. I fell in love with you when you faced down those 3 men without flinching, when you put yourself between them and me, even though you did not know me at all. That is when I knew what kind of man you were." Teresa turned in his arms and kissed him, the kiss still as sweet and stirring as it had been 20 years ago. "Thank you for saving me, Nathan Jennings. Not just that day by the river, but every day since." "Thank you for letting me," Nathan said. "Thank you for choosing this life, for choosing me. You made me the luckiest man alive." They stood by the river until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Then they rode back to the ranch together, to the home they had built, to the life they had created from a chance meeting and a moment of courage. Teresa and Nathan lived long, full lives, surrounded by children and grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through the generations, along with the story of how it all began. The story of a woman fleeing for her life, a cowboy who refused to stand by, and a love that grew from the darkest moment into a light that never faded. When Teresa died at the age of 78, peacefully in her sleep with Nathan holding her hand, the whole county came to pay their respects. She was remembered as a pillar of the community, a woman of strength and compassion who had helped countless others in their times of need. But to Nathan, she was simply the love of his life, the woman who had made every day an adventure. Nathan lived another 3 years, long enough to see his youngest grandchild married, and then he too passed on, dying in the same bed where Teresa had breathed her last. His children found him there one morning, a peaceful smile on his face, and they knew he had gone to join the woman he loved. They buried Nathan and Teresa side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the river where their story had begun. The headstones were simple, bearing their names and the years of their lives, but to those who knew them, no words were needed. Their love story was written in the land itself, in the strong walls of the ranch house, in the faces of their descendants, in the legacy of kindness and courage they left behind. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, the ranch hands swore they could see 2 figures walking hand in hand along the river. A tall man and a dark-haired woman, still together as they had always been, still writing their story in the dust and water and endless sky of the Texas frontier. The ranch thrived for generations, each new owner adding their own chapter to the family history. But the founding story, the tale of Teresa Ramirez and Nathan Jennings, remained the cornerstone of the family legacy. Parents told it to their children, who told it to their children in turn. It became a part of the land itself, as permanent as the river that still flowed through the property. Miguel's memory was honored too. A scholarship was established in his name, helping young people from poor families get an education. Every year on the anniversary of his death, the family gathered to remember the man whose sacrifice had made everything else possible. His bravery was not forgotten, woven as it was into the very fabric of the family's origin story. Years turned into decades, and the wild frontier gradually became settled. The outlaws and dangers that had once been commonplace faded into history. Towns grew into cities. Railroads crisscrossed the land. The world changed in ways that Teresa and Nathan could never have imagined, but some things remained constant. The land still demanded hard work and resilience. The river still flowed, carrying with it the memories of those who had walked its banks. And love, that most enduring of human experiences, still had the power to transform lives and create legacies that echoed through time. The old ranch house still stood, lovingly maintained by each generation. Inside, on a shelf in the sitting room, sat the poetry book Mrs. Hutchinson had given to Teresa on the day she left for Gonzales. Its pages were yellowed and fragile, but the words were still readable, still offering comfort and beauty to anyone who opened its covers. Next to the book was a photograph, one of the few that existed from that era. It showed a young couple standing in front of a ranch house, the man tall and serious, the woman small and fierce-looking. Both were squinting into the sun, and if you looked closely, you could see their hands joined between them, fingers intertwined. On the back of the photograph, in Teresa's careful handwriting, were the words, "By the river I fell, but Nathan said I would run no more, that I was safe now. He kept his promise." And he had. Through 20 years of marriage and 55 years after that day by the river, Nathan had kept Teresa safe, not by shielding her from every hardship or protecting her from every sorrow, but by standing beside her through it all, by giving her a partnership built on mutual respect and deep love, by creating a home where she could flourish and grow and become the woman she was meant to be. In the end, safety had not meant the absence of danger. It had meant having someone to face the danger with, someone who would never let her face it alone. It had meant building a life so full of love and purpose that the shadows of the past could never overcome it. Teresa's story, begun in terror and flight, had ended in peace and profound fulfillment. From the desperate girl collapsing by a river to the matriarch of a thriving family, her journey had been marked by courage, resilience, and the transformative power of love. She had stopped running that day by the river, and in stopping, she had found everything she had never known she needed. The ranch that Nathan had built, that he and Teresa had expanded together, stood as a testament to what two people could create when they committed to a shared vision. It was more than land and cattle and buildings. It was a legacy of values, a commitment to hard work and fair dealing, a belief in helping those in need, a dedication to family and community. And at the heart of it all was a love story. A simple, powerful story about a man who saw someone in need and chose to help, and a woman brave enough to accept that help and build something beautiful from it. In a time and place where life was often hard and short, where survival itself was an accomplishment, Teresa and Nathan had created something that transcended mere survival. They had created a life worth living, a love worth celebrating, a story worth telling. The Wild West eventually became just the West, and then simply another part of America's history. But stories like Teresa and Nathan's remained, passed down through generations, reminding people of a time when individual choices mattered enormously, when a single act of courage or kindness could change the course of a life. On warm summer evenings, when the family gathered on the porch of the old ranch house, someone would inevitably bring up the founding story. The children who had heard it 100 times would lean forward anyway, eager to hear it again. The details might change slightly with each telling, embellished here, simplified there, but the core remained the same. A woman running for her life, a cowboy who refused to look away, a moment by a river when everything changed, and a love that grew from that moment, strong enough to build a legacy that lasted long after they were gone. It was a story about the Wild West, yes, with all the danger and drama that implied, but more than that, it was a story about what it means to be human, about the courage to keep going when everything seems lost, about the generosity to help a stranger in need, about the willingness to take a chance on love, even when the odds seem impossible. In the end, Teresa had not just survived, she had thrived. She had taken the fragments of her shattered life and built something new and beautiful. She had honored her brother's sacrifice by living fully, by creating a family and a home and a legacy that would endure. And Nathan had found what he had been searching for without even knowing he was searching. In saving Teresa, he had found his purpose, his partner, his great love. He had discovered that sometimes the most important thing a person can do is simply show up at the right moment and offer help without expectation of reward. Their story became part of Texas folklore, one of thousands of stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in extraordinary times. But to their descendants, it was never just folklore. It was family history, as real and vital as the land itself. It shaped how they saw the world and themselves, giving them a foundation of values and beliefs that guided them through their own challenges. The ranch itself changed over the years, adapting to new technologies and new markets, but certain things remained sacred. The hill where Teresa and Nathan were buried was never developed, always maintained as a peaceful place for family to gather and remember. The old ranch house, though added onto and modernized, retained its core structure, a physical link to the past. And the annual gathering on the anniversary of Teresa and Nathan's wedding became a beloved tradition, bringing together family members from across the country. At these gatherings, the oldest members would share their memories of Nathan and Teresa, keeping their personalities alive for younger generations who had never known them. They spoke of Teresa's quick wit and fierce protectiveness of her family. They remembered Nathan's calm strength and dry humor. They told stories about the early years of the ranch, the struggles and triumphs, the near disasters and unexpected blessings. And always, they came back to that day by the river, the day when a woman fleeing for her life fell beside the water, exhausted and terrified, certain she had reached the end. The day when a cowboy appeared and spoke words that changed everything. "You run no more. You are safe now." It was a promise that Nathan had kept for the rest of his life, a promise that had shaped not just 2 lives, but generations of lives that followed. A promise that reminded everyone who heard the story about the power of human kindness, the importance of standing up for others, and the miraculous things that can grow from a single moment of courage and compassion. In a world that often seemed chaotic and cruel, the story of Teresa and Nathan offered hope. It proved that one person could make a difference, that love could flourish even in the hardest circumstances, that from the darkest moments could come the brightest futures. The river still flowed, as it had for countless years and would for countless more. But for the family that gathered on its banks, it was not just a river. It was a symbol of continuity, of life going on, of stories that never really ended as long as someone was there to tell them. And so the story continued, passed from parent to child, from grandparent to grandchild, each generation adding their own chapters while honoring the foundation laid by Teresa and Nathan. It was a love story, yes, but it was also so much more. It was a story about resilience and redemption, about finding home in unexpected places, about the families we are born into and the families we create. It was the story of how a moment of desperation became the beginning of a legacy, how a woman fleeing for her life found not just safety, but love, purpose, and a future beyond anything she could have imagined. How a cowboy's simple act of decency became the foundation for a family dynasty that would endure for generations. It was, in the end, a very human story, filled with the same hopes and fears, joys and sorrows that have always defined the human experience. But it was also uniquely theirs, Teresa and Nathan's story, told and retold until it became legend, but never losing the essential truth at its core. Two people met by a river in the Wild West of 1878. He saved her life. She saved his heart. Together, they built something that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes, a testament to the enduring power of love and the infinite possibilities that can unfold when one person says to another, "You are safe now." And that, in the end, was everything. Safety not just from physical danger, but from loneliness and despair. Safety to be fully oneself, to love and be loved, to build a life of meaning and purpose. That was what Nathan had given Teresa by the river that day, and what she had given him in return when she chose to stay, to work beside him, to build a life with him. It was a gift that echoed through time, touching everyone who came after them. A reminder that in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving, there was also kindness. That in the midst of loss and tragedy, there was also hope. That love, when freely given and gratefully received, had the power to transform everything. The sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and another day passed into history. But the story remained, as alive and vital as ever, waiting for the next telling, the next generation to carry it forward into an unknown future. The story of Teresa Ramirez and Nathan Jennings, whose love story began beside a river in the Wild West and never really ended at all.